Okay, so a big installation here. The customer was away on holiday and trusted us with the keys. We sheeted the whole space out, brought all the parts in, set up the workbench as you saw there, and got the tools out. And then I got to setting out with the laser just to get a visual on exactly where I wanted that front face to land. And then I marked with masking tape and began cutting the carpet out, just to make sure that those solid feet, those adjustable feet, go onto solid floor. The carpet ends up lapped just under where the final plinth will sit. Now I've folded the carpet back to cut the underlay in order to take off the grippers from around the edge where they might interfere with the feet, and then refit the grippers so they will just hold that carpet in a position where the carpet will lap under the furniture edge, as I said, but the gripper's there just to hold it tight as it should be, and it shouldn't be too deep under the furniture that any future change of carpet. Now I was using a Lascaux 3 laser, 360 degree laser, which is pretty good, one of many Chinese brands, but what it doesn't have is a low down laser level. I needed to give myself a reference line for 60mm feet. We were having quite a short plinth on this project, and that laser I simply can't get it close enough to the floor for 60mm, so I've gone to my go-to compact laser, which is, I think it's called the FL360G from Hranipex, which has its 360 degree laser right on the bottom edge there, so you can sit it very close to the floor or use a bracket and use that bracket to just put it up to a precise known position. I went right round the room just checking that at the highest point I wasn't going to have too short of a gap for the feet to adjust to their minimum, and same at the lowest point, in the sense that the floor is lower below level, that I wouldn't have too long of a gap to extend the feet to the max. So I checked all that, decided my position, and then worked off that. I've then fixed a batten to support the back edges of the units, or along that wall actually it's one big platform, because it's just face frame units there under the angle. So I used the nail gun to pin it quickly to level, made some little tweaks to get it just bang on level. Then I added packers, added some Craig screws actually as well, just so that's really rock solid. And I'll be honest, one reason for doing that was we were using the Axello 60mm tool feet, but I couldn't find the Axello adjusting tool. So I thought, well, let's just get that back level where it should be, and then I'll only have to adjust the front feet. In fact, with this big platform, I decided to scatter a few feet about because the customer had been very keen that it's very, very rigid. So I put some feet upside down and then pre-leveled them, and then put the platform on top of them. The way I'm building here was driven largely by budget constraints, as was the choice to swap from oak veneered board as per the original brief to a melamine. This was a Kronospan melamine. I had my doubts about the quality to start with, but actually it looked really good. It does chip easier, being on a chipboard core, and my understanding is that Kronospan is a step down from Egger quality-wise, but the finished result with care in the fitting was very good. I'm actually using Hranipex feet there because I had some of them and they're cheaper. They were very difficult actually to level though, because the top is sort of flat and sharp. So when you're just having to grab that top rim to level them, the Axello are much better designed from that point of view, which isn't something I'd sort of spotted before. You'll see the way that these angled units are made is a bit different. This is something we're experimented with, where all those parts were drawn in Sketchup through CabinetSense, CNC-manufactured, and that overlapping joint you saw there meant we didn't actually have to do any bevel cuts. It just all went together. Now what you're seeing here is the Zebedee hanging rail, which is a spiral hanging rail designed to be fitted on an angle so that you can put your hangers on into each of those loops and they're not going to slide down the angle. It's very robustly made, British made. The designer Diane showcased it on Dragon's Den, and I'm happy to get the word out because I'd say it's a good product. After unwrapping the Zebedee hanging rails, I realised I had to park the installation of them because we needed to make a supporting board. I'd left that a bit not pinned down in the design process, but I realised that there wasn't a good fixing point in the ceiling. So I needed a big bridging board, which we made and sprayed. Well, Brady made and sprayed it for me to fit a couple of days later. Here you'll just see me fitting some space plugs to make those frames nice and rigid and well plumbed. So I'd scribed and fitted a 22mm painted panel there. The frames were all levelled and fitted to the angled ceiling with my favourite long brackets from Bedrooms Plus, and screwed to each other, as I think you saw earlier. And here I'm assembling one of the base cabinets. These are all, of course, designed and planned in SketchUp and CabinetSense, and cut out on the CNC and then edge banded. The cabineos that you see me using, even though I'm adding screws in between, which by the way are programmed with pre-drilled holes off the CNC, the cabineos serve to precisely locate the parts because they, by default, they stick out just, I don't know, 2 or 3mm and nicely just drop into the 5mm hole that they will then thread into when you tighten them up. So they do make it a lot easier to locate and square the cabinet, get it all tightened up. And then I just choose to alternate with screws to save a bit of money because the cabineos are 30p or so, screws maybe 3p. So I've set up a rule in CabinetSense where you just use screws usually in between the cabineos. Now as we pan back around here, you can see my usual method for the long brackets in a recess holding those cabinets to the wall. But here where we wouldn't be able to cover the upstand of the bracket, I'm using the newish space plug minis with a 100mm screw through a red wall plug, my favourite Uno red wall plug. I think I might just be doing that again here to show the process of putting the plug in better. Let's take a look at how we're using the space plug original and mini versions for this front frame style construction. The space plug original will adjust between 30 and 50mm gaps. So if you look here, for example, we're using it for about a 35mm gap. That's got a 100mm screw through the middle into a red Uno wall plug because this is a masonry supporting wall. On the other side here, we've got space plugs into the same Uno plug, which we find reliable for plasterboard because that's what it's attaching to there. And there we've got a space of 42. If you look over here, we've got the space plug minis, which is the new edition, long requested for gaps less than 30mm. It'll go between 15 and 30, so there it's just under 20. If you look up here, we've got the variation with the added spacer that allows it to go up towards 30. Now with this left-hand upper unit, which is identical to the one that will be on the right, we've got the cabineos fixing the tops, bottoms and backs to the sides. And you'll have seen in that back panel there were some black fixings. They were just biscuits which will support the back edge of the shelves. On the sides here, you see there, that is Divario. So they've been hammered into, they go into a pair of 8mm diameter holes which are CNC drilled. The groove on the edge of the shelves then is done manually using the Lamello P-system machine. So the benefit of that really was keeping the weight down on this unit to help me get it up as a one-man lift. I did have some trouble, as you might notice, with it jamming on the ceiling, but just about managed to get around that. I took a bit of fine finish filler, which I patched up the scuffs on the ceiling with. Here I'm just pre-fitting a simple MDF batten, which is what will receive the scribe. I fit that back 19 or 20mm back from the edge for an 18mm thick scribe. It's better that it just sits back and that hides the joint. So I'm getting that upright using the rail saw bag as a bit of padding, then tugging that out of the way. I got a batten on the top there, you'll see, for the scribe as well. And the Divarios allow me to fix screws through the sides in positions that will end up hidden by the shelf. So that's another benefit of using them, to secure the side panel that was going on all around the window.
It's nice to be treated as an individual. That's why with an Aqua credit card, we give you a personalised credit limit that could grow as we get to know you. So you can feel confident.
With this job being fairly tight on the price, and we're talking, I think it was 12,600 with the VAT that I charged, but the customer had a quote over 20 grand from another Sheffield provider, bigger, more established, higher end provider, and that would have been with real oak veneer, that would have been with solid carcasses. They wanted to bring it down, and I think the price I did was fair with the materials I used and the care I took. I took a long time over the fit and the planning. But I did decide to stick with the Hranipex NU80 runners instead of the Blum, because they cost me less than a third. And I thought, well, I'm just going to take a lot of care over the fit, and rather than rely too much on the adjustment up and down on the runners, which can cause those runners to tilt because there's no back adjustment, I just got my faces nice and flat to the front, and then, as you saw there, just packed those frontages up using space plugs actually, and just got it just bang on, and then just tried to not need to adjust the runner adjustment, and it works pretty well. So you saw there me just fitting the board that would receive the angled rail, the Zebedee hanging rail. I'm also here just feeding through where some cables needed to go for the customer. And this is about it for part one of this 3-part big build series. In the second part, we'll look at fitting the doors, the hinges that we've used, and fitting the Zebedee hanging rail, scribing in more detail, and a number of other things. And then part 3 will focus on tip-on mechanisms and finishing touches.